This track, we're going to have a talk about, or talk titled From MSSP to Trusted Advisor, Evolving for Cyber Resilience. Your speaker today is Robert Gorman. He is a senior partner at Cyber Defense Advisors with a proven track record of transforming IT departments into high-performing business-aligned teams. He has an expertise in M&A strategy, leading due diligence, acquisition, integrations, and IT roadmap development. He's a global IT leader with experience driving operational efficiency, vendor management, and robust security. And he's recognized for delivering measurable impact, including $4.5 million in annual vendor cost savings and increasing company valuation by $75 million. And he will take it away. You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for coming out to the suburbs of this conference center. I know it's a long walk over. So I'm going to start out with something a little crazy, but I have to start you out with a cliche. I want you all to take a deep breath and think about it. What is the one thing that keeps you up at night? I know it's cliche, but think about this. Is it client retention? Is it cyber attacks? Is it the evolving tech industry? Let's be real. Being an MSP or MSSP used to be pretty straightforward. You know, you would keep things running, handle the tickets, protect the endpoints, quarterly business reviews, done. You're done. But times have changed, especially in the last 5 years, haven't they? The real problem is that just keeping the lights on isn't enough anymore. Clients aren't looking for someone to only fix tickets and keep endpoints secure. They want a partner who can help them make sense of the constant changing cybersecurity threats and tech. This is a new way of thinking and interfacing with your clients effectively. If you stay stuck in the old model, you risk being seen as just another provider instead of the trusted advisor that you're actually looking for. In this session, we're going to walk through a transformative framework that helps MSPs and MSSPs evolve into strategic cybersecurity advisors. We're going to explore, 1, speaking the language of the boardroom. Well, actually, if you could flip the slide. Sorry. Cool. Speaking the language of the boardroom, maturing your cybersecurity posture, evolving your delivery model, and positioning you as a strategic partner. Grab the clicker. I know better when to switch, right? Okay, good, thanks. So, if you want to grow your business, win the bigger clients, and earn a seat at the executive table, this is your framework and your path forward. All right, let's talk about why this transformation is necessary. Cyber threats are escalating in complexity and impact. Meanwhile, regulatory demands are increasing and clients are under constant pressure, now legally, to demonstrate cyber resilience to stakeholders and the government as well. And here's the big shift. In January of 2025, the False Claims Act was put in place, and companies are now liable for any false claims that they have documented in their certifications and stuff. So what this means is that you need to be absolutely clear and demonstrate that you are executing on what you have documented. So anecdotally, I know a lot of companies who treat their compliance tasks as something to just check off and they're done. In quite a few instances, I've seen companies state that they are using multi-factor authentication, but they only have it on, like, let's say, their O365 environment. They do not have MFA in place for things like their financial, HR, and other systems. And this is what I mean by false claims. I know a lot of people in the room right now are probably shifting in their seats, either because they know there are gaps or of that like or in their environments, or they are worried because they're now unsure if those gaps exist. But sorry to say this, the news does get worse. The penalties for the False Claims Act are 3 times the government's damages, plus a penalty that is linked to inflation, and even worse, prison time it could be associated with it. These fees are not just another slap on the wrist. They're in the upper hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. Along with this landscape change, boards are now demanding visibility into cybersecurity risk. As more information is published about cybersecurity threats and attacks, and companies that have been brought down, boards are asking tougher, more qualifying questions around the risk the company is exposed to. They want to know what these current exposures are and what the plans, costs, and time are to mitigate them. Many board members have now seen firsthand or through colleagues the impacts of ransomware and data breaches. The costs to the companies, as you know, go far beyond the payment of a ransom or actions to close the data leaks. To these points, the boards don't want us to be seen as negligent by not asking the right questions and not governing the company appropriately. Besides what the company and the boards are looking for, there's other important people to consider and that you need to address properly, like CEOs. Most CEOs prioritize resilience over uptime. And much like the board's concerns, CEOs don't want to deal with the horrific aftermath of a breach or a ransomware attack. Many CEOs see uptime as a given. They see cyber attacks as the greatest threat to bringing down their operations. The shift in their governance model is now looking to see how to block and survive those cyber attacks. So the CEO of a financial client once called me after his IT team requested unexpected downtime to apply a critical security patch. He wanted to know if the vulnerability was really as urgent as they claimed. And I told him plainly, yes. It was actually actively targeting the financial sector. And if left unpatched, his operations could be exposed for a long period of time. Although the patching caused a wave of customer calls and complaints and frustration, the company avoided the same vulnerability that went on to disrupt several of their peers. Later, when the board actually questioned the CEO didn't hesitate. He said, downtime cost us customers for a day, a breach cost us customers forever. The last group of people to address may be the most critical to your success, as they alone own the risk for the company. I'm talking about the CFOs. CFOs track financial exposure and compliance obligations. CFOs manage a company's risk. They own that risk, whether that be financial, operational, and/or cybersecurity risks. So I've known the CEO of our oldest client for years, and every time a new technology comes up, the first reaction is always doubt and skepticism. What I've learned is that if I explain the idea in terms of the risks they're already worried about, or the business advantages it could bring, the conversation completely changes. Aside from the usual back and forth on costs, this approach has worked almost every time. It's a simple story, but it really shows what CFOs actually care about: reducing risk and creating value, not the technology itself. Clients don't just want tech talk or someone who shows up only when something breaks. What they're really looking for is clarity, predictability, and the confidence that their weak spots are actually being covered. That's what they're paying you for. And real guidance, not jargon. So, If all you're delivering are tickets and reports, you're falling short. The role of the MSP, or MSSP, has to grow beyond that. The MSSPs that are thriving in this environment aren't just solving problems, they're helping clients navigate risk, regulation, and trust. The first thing they do successfully is they speak the language of the business. What is the language of a business? Now, I can guarantee you it is nothing that comes out of an engineer's mouth. Frankly, that is the major misnomer of BRMs. They firmly believe that just because a technology can solve a problem, the company will automatically purchase that technology or service. Any improvement has to be tied to mitigating a risk and/or an improvement to their cash flow. If your suggestions aren't pointing to either of those two business drivers, you're just speaking in intangibles. Now, besides speaking the language of the business, another thing they do is they lead with calm and credibility. I want you all to think of people who you admire as strong leaders. They're most likely cool, poised, and just oozing with confidence. MSSPs mostly deal with client problems. It's a thankless job, exacerbated by frustrated and time-pressured end users and managers. Because of this, they desperately need their MSPs or MSSPs to approach challenges and questions with calm, cool, and collected demeanors. Troubled times are the best opportunity to display your strengths and the competencies that you have through your calm, decisive language and actions. This shows your command of the situation as well as presenting you as the go-to person when they need help the most. And finally, credibility does not mean knowing everything. It does mean fully understanding the client's situation, bringing in the resources that are needed to resolve and handle those issues, all while quarterbacking the entire scenario while delivering constant communication. In addition to leading with calm and clarity, there's another thing you might want to consider in order to stand out with any client, and that is to think strategically and communicate clearly. So it's kind of nebulous, so I'm going to say this is defined kind of as understanding the long-term impact of your decisions and making sure that others can understand and act on your ideas effectively. Let me also start by saying strategic does not mean pitching all the technology and solutions you think the client needs to get them where you think they should go. It does, however, mean having been involved and working with the client deeply enough to understand their business, its risks, and what their actual goals are. Once you understand these things, you can begin to fully formulate a strategy that would be meaningful, impactful, and potentially achievable to the client. At this point, you need to be able to articulate this strategy by framing it in a risk resolution, timeline-specific, and budgeting framework. Anything less should be left to conversations amongst the engineers and technicians. So, this reminds me of that meme where a project team is trying to build a swing. You all know that one, right? Every panel shows a different version based on what each person thought it should look like, and none of them are right. It's funny, but it's also exactly what happens. You know, when we gather the business requirements, everyone has their own idea, and it's easy to miss the mark. That's why it's on us to really listen to the business units and then clearly explain the situation and solution, just like what's shown in the last panel. So, let's contrast the old and new models. In the old model, quarterly business reviews focused on account metrics, key performance indicators, and service level agreements. The BRMs tried with every ounce of their personal goal metrics to expand that account. And Here's the thing, the client can smell the desperation in the air, and all they hear is upsell, upsell, upsell out of the account manager's mouth. But in the new model, the BRM or account manager has conversations with the client's senior leadership to understand where their client's business is going and where their short and long-term risks reside, both financially and operationally. At this point, you are in a position to display your company's breadth of experience in each of the client's specific areas of need. However, here's one, you don't push your services. Merely discuss how you would solve these issues if you were the client from your experience. It's a shift, but it works. And now is the time to ask how they would solve these issues and risks. What is their strategy? How do they plan to address these topics? By doing this, you're evaluating their appetite for change and or budgetary spend. In short, you're not just providing tools or software or services. They can get that anywhere else. You're showing up differently. You're showing up as a partner, as an advisor, and that difference earns trust. Every group that you interact with, whether in your daily life or in business, speaks its own language. Now let's explore the one that matters most in leadership settings, the language of the boardroom. Boards want clarity. CEOs want resilience. CFOs want predictability. To meet those expectations, you have to communicate in business terms. And here's how you do that. Use your executive briefings to translate risk into business and financial impact. Do not just jump to a solution, even though you clearly know what it should be. There's an important piece that many MSPs and MSSPs miss, and that is what the business considers acceptable risk. I know it drives most of us crazy here, but as an example of an acceptable risk, this is like where a business decides to replace their laptops every 5 years instead of 3. It's a risk they're willing to take on, and we just have to go with it. By discussing business and financial impact, you are actually opening up the conversation to understand and discuss what is acceptable and what will have long-term impacts on their business. Once these are understood, you can guide the client to come up with the solution that best fits them, which is usually the one that you're trying to present from the beginning. This is basic psychology. You're not trying to push an agenda, but you're trying to get the client to do what's needed by making them feel like it's their idea or the most logical choice at the very least. As you are fully aware, boards and C-levels have limited funds that they need to appropriate to the initiatives and projects that will drive the company forward. If you are merely seen as a cost center, your initiatives will never get prioritized. In my M&A work with private equity firms, tech leaders often ask me, how did you get the board to approve that? We've been trying for years. And my answer is always simple. I didn't change the project. I didn't change the budget. I changed how it was presented. I repackaged it in terms that the board needed to hear. So then, what does that all mean? It means the key to your success is to focus your quarterly business reviews on emerging threats, financial risk, and compliance trends that are relevant to their particular line of business. QBRs aren't just a place to show how the contract is going, but rather it should showcase your understanding of the client's current business forecast and their state of affairs. If this is over your client, your audience's head when you're doing the QBR, it means you are not presenting it to the right level in the company. This is to say that the people that the operational teams deal with on a daily basis are probably not the people who need to be the audience for the QBRs. And QBRs aren't just a report, they're a strategic conversation with the C-suite. They showcase the value your company delivers while giving leadership clear, data-driven direction on where to head to next. And yes, as you know, C-levels love visuals. So a great way to show them all the data that you're doing is to use heat risk maps to illustrate vulnerabilities across departments or business units. Now, you know this, when they see reds and deficiencies, they immediately ask you why, as opposed to them, you trying to tell them about it. I've seen way too many QBRs trying to show that everything is okay, just in fear of them that they were going to lose the contract if they disclose issues. But that's counterintuitive. You need to display that you have command over those issues and the account as a whole. This in turn builds trust that you understand the problems and have plans to resolve them. So when you're doing this, at all costs, just avoid technical rabbit holes. Instead, use concise visual formats and focus on outcomes. When you start speaking their language, you stop being seen as a vendor and start being trusted as an advisor. Now, before going further, let's be clear, without a solid cybersecurity foundation, you can't compete for the high level and high value clients. Security isn't just a feature you're offering, it's a qualification to play the game. While this may sound like common sense, many MSPs and MSSPs are only executing aspects that are within their wheelhouse. There are 4 levels of cybersecurity that every service provider must be considering, either performing them internally or bringing in an external partner to assist and white label even. Here's a simple maturity model to assess your company's readiness to support your client's cybersecurity needs. Number 1 is foundational aspects around the basics, again, like endpoint protection and backup, stuff like that. Number 2 is compliance, understanding framework alignment to the business and audit readiness. Number 3 is resiliency, which goes under XDR, incident response plans, 24/7 visibility. And number 4 is strategic, where you align risk management and zero trust and other items like supply chain awareness. So let's start with number 1, foundational. Again, with items like endpoint protection, backups, all the basics. This first area, most of us are already doing well, as it's often the entry point into engagements with our clients. That said, as with anything foundational, unfortunately, we must be nearly flawless in our execution. These basic needs must be constantly maintained, updated, and managed. If you have issues at this level, the client will not have trust in you to allow you to work on the next 3 levels. And the second of those 4 levels is compliance. Things like framework alignment, audit readiness, and such. This level is around understanding your client's business and what areas of compliancy they touch. There are many compliance frameworks for almost every industry. I'm going to give you some examples. I know most of you know it, but if your client's in the healthcare industry and handles medical information, they would probably need to be dealing with HIPAA. If your client processes credit cards and aren't using a third party for this, they would be subject to PCI DSS compliance. If the client develops their own SaaS applications, they should be looking at SOC 2. And if your client is in Europe or does business in Europe, they are probably subject to GDPR or even ISO 27001 compliance. Now, one of the biggest compliance issues your clients who work with government entities are now facing, or soon to face, are CMMC, FedRAMP, CGIS, and the like. If your clients have government contracts or are a subcontractor to a firm that does, they are now subject to these compliance frameworks. The entire concept here is to understand your client's business and advise them on compliance needs, even if you are not the one who will be assisting them, implementing them, or remediating them. And why is because, at the very least, understanding their compliance requirements allows you to ensure that you bake their compliance needs into every technology and service you implement for them. The last thing you want is to be the reason they fail a compliance certification or audit. Number 3 in our maturity model is around resiliency. Now, resiliency is the new foundational level. If your client is not addressing resiliency, then you are failing again as a trusted advisor. There are currently a couple of court cases that are active around cybersecurity insurance, that the insurance is not willing to pay out after an attack. So what it's around is basically your XDR system is not utilizing AI components to combat attacks, and you are breached by an AI-based attack. Then the insurance company is stating that you aren't doing the bare minimum to protect yourself, and hence will not pay out. Additionally, your incident response plans need to be closely tied to your DR and BCP plans with the client. You can no longer just respond to a cyber attack in case one happens. You and the company must be fully prepared for different levels of attack. This requires maturity, planning, and practicing on your part, as well as on your clients. And finally, 24/7 visibility is key. You as an MSSP should already be aware, working on, and communicating on a breach before your client first call comes in. If a client calls first to report a breach, you've already failed in their eyes. Number 4 in our maturity model is about being strategic. This means, as stated before, that you fully understand your client's business model and what their roadmap is. Only then can you truly align risk management with them. Being strategic also means guiding your client towards cybersecurity best practices, things like zero trust. Now, again, these types of changes require a lot of hand-holding to get through, and are a perfect opportunity for you guys to shine. And the best way to shine is to have strong command of project and program management. Another example of leadership is around supply chain awareness. If you're not already aware, this is quickly becoming the next big area in cybersecurity. I can give you story after story of companies that have been breached through their third-party vendors. Understanding a company's vendors and how they interface with each other is a key step in maturing their overall security posture. If you want to offer assessments, I would say I want you to offer assessments, simulations, and response planning as part of your core services going forward. This proves to clients that you're not just capable, you're prepared. Next, let's discuss how to evolve your delivery model. Trust isn't built with SLAs. It's built through transparency, consistency, and strategic foresight. There are 4 ways. I guess I missed one on there. There are 3 ways, sorry. Miscounted. There are 3 ways to evolve. 1, I want you to produce outcome-focused dashboards. 2, implement proactive risk reviews and forecasting. 3, generate measurable and impactful areas of improvement-based quarterly briefings. Now, starting with number 1, replace your ticket logs with outcome-focused dashboards. This means changing your approach. Each metric should connect directly to an organizational priority or outcome. As an example, instead of showing number of training sessions delivered, I want you to show percentage increase in employees' compliance rates after training. Insights should be actionable. highlighting where interventions are working and where changes are still needed. Be forward-looking. Include leading indicators to predict future success, not just lagging indicators of past performance. Implementing proactive risk reviews and forecasting, you'll need to build structured, forward-looking processes to identify, evaluate, and prepare for those potential risks before they materialize. Instead of reacting to incidences as they occur, this approach anticipates threats and vulnerabilities so organizations can minimize or even prevent impact. In order to achieve this, you need to have regular risk reviews, where you have systematic assessments in which you periodically review existing risks, which are like cybersecurity, operational, financial compliance, et cetera, to ensure that they're still relevant and accurately scored. Display control effectiveness checks in which you evaluate whether their current controls and safeguards are working as intended. And update your risk registers by incorporating new findings, emerging threats, or lessons that are learned from past incidences into an organization's risk documentation. After this, you can then forecast emerging risks through things like trend analysis by using historical data, threat intelligence, and industry reports to predict where the new risks are likely to emerge. You can do scenario planning by modeling potential what-if situations, such as supply chain disruptions, new cyber attack techniques, regulatory changes, to really understand possible impact to their business. And finally, predictive indicators where you identify early warning signals like phishing attempts or vendor instability. These early signals suggest a growing risk in those areas. So I want you to offer quarterly briefings that demonstrate measurable improvement and/or impactful areas of improvement. So here's some examples. Instead of only tracking number of patches applied, you might track reduction in critical vulnerabilities exploited, or time to detect and respond to threats. Other examples would be phishing simulation click rates dropped by 15% compared to last quarter, or patch management improved 72 to 90%, or mean time to detection of detect incidents decreased by 30%. Clients want to know what you are doing to protect my business next quarter. Make your engagements forward-looking. That's really how to build trust. So, before we begin discussing how to reposition yourself as a strategic partner, here are some very telling metrics that will make you sit up and really take notice. The first is around high cybersecurity-driven turnover. A major driver to MSSP's dissatisfaction, believe it or not, is cybersecurity. A 2024 report found that 98% of MSSPs believe they need to improve their own security hygiene. As cyber threats evolve, clients who perceive their own, the MSSPs that they're using as falling behind are highly likely to seek more capable providers. The second metric is around average annual churn. The customer churn rate across managed services in the managed services industry averages 12% annually, according to an April 2025 analysis. This means that over the course of a year, an MSSP can expect to lose a significant portion of its client base, indicating constant and consistent market turnover. Now, if you weren't scared enough, those clients that we're talking about are currently reevaluating all your contracts. A 2025 report on technology trends found that 37% of companies are planning to reevaluate their current vendors or contracts as key cost-saving measures. And I could tell you it's even higher than that anecdotally talking to people. This makes vendor reassessment one of the top tech-related strategies for streamlining costs. This represents a significant opportunity for competitors and everyone in this room. In the competitive MSSP market, nearly half, 48% around, of MSSPs report that customer budget constraints and general economic caution are major obstacles to winning new business. However, this also indicates an opportunity for competing MSSPs that can innovate and offer stronger cybersecurity and cloud services to lure customers away from their existing providers. In essence, vendors can be replaced. However, strategic partners get invited into planning meetings. Here's how you reposition. Create shared roadmaps with your clients. When you hear your sales executives talking about making contracts more sticky, they're usually talking about locking in clients into long-term contracts and or licensing where they can't easily move away from your company. But what they should be focusing on to truly make your company sticky and highly valued is to have shared roadmaps. By creating this, you are sharing the burdens of growth together, thereby keeping you locked into your client's future plans. Talk about outcomes, not features. Here we're going back to engineer speak versus executive presence. If you get wrapped around the axle with details about what a technology service has, you'll quickly lose the decision maker's attention and interest. In the end, it is like all positive influencing, where you get your audience to imagine the amazing things that will happen to their company by implementing your proposed technologies and services. If they can imagine it and it fits into their business drivers, they will move forward with your proposed initiatives. Next is one of the most critical pieces that require a lot of effort on your part. And you should be building relationships with the C-suite and non-technical stakeholders. This one cannot be understated. You've heard the term manage upwards. Well, this is exactly what it means. And I'm going to diverge from this for a second. A lot of us, we often have a hard time getting those meetings, but that's what I'm talking about. Try and work your way to do those. It's so important. Most of the time, operationally, day to day, you're going to be speaking with the operational tactical leaders who are basically running things. Well, this is great for day-to-day operations. You need to make every effort to go above and beyond to forge those relationships, like I was saying, with the C-suite and business unit owners. While the benefits are not immediately apparent, it pays off in spades later. Often BRMs and account managers are unable to obtain those meetings with the C-suite and business owners when they need to escalate or have important meetings, like QBRs. This is a symptom of not forging relationships ahead of time. When an emergency comes up, these high-level leaders will defer to their operational leaders who have been working with you all along. However, if you have a relationship with these C-levels ahead of time, they will be very willing to at least listen and possibly assist you when you need them most. And using strategic frameworks like FAIR, which is the Fair Analysis and Information Risk, or NIST CSF to ground your recommendations in recognized models, you can really move those conversations forward. By using FAIR, you can move risk conversations from high, medium, and low into dollars and probabilities, it provides a structured way to estimate likelihood and impact of threats. And so as an example, instead of saying phishing is a major risk, you might use FAIR to show that phishing could result in $3 million of potential annualized loss exposure. Now, by using NIST, you could provide a roadmap for assessing gaps and prioritizing improvements. It helps align security goals with business objectives and regulatory expectations. As an example here, rather than saying we should improve monitoring, you might say, under the detect function of NIST CSF, we're recommending expanding SIEM coverage to increase anomaly detection. When you lead with outcomes, you are no longer just providing services. You're shaping business direction by providing credibility, clarity, and benchmarking. So, oops, sorry about that. So far, we've explored the principles, practices, and strategies that underpin cybersecurity leadership. To bring this all together, let me recap the 4 main points to help you become a really highly trusted advisor again. First, speak the language of executives. Again, this means speaking in a business manner that focuses on risks, costs, and outcomes. Pictures and graphs are best demonstrate this. Do not speak about product or service features, speak about outcomes and business drivers. Second, demonstrate a mature cybersecurity posture. Amp up your foundational posture by executing flawlessly on the basics. Get or keep your client compliant by aligning them and yourself to their compliance frameworks and keeping them audit ready. Bake in resiliency into their ecosystem and have absolute visibility into it. And keep your client moving forward in a strategic direction through business-aligned risk management and situational awareness. Third, build a delivery model centered on trust. Replace those tickets and logs with outcome-focused dashboards. Implement proactive risks and forecasting. Offer quarterly briefings that demonstrate measurable improvement and/or impactful areas of opportunity. And finally, reposition yourself as a long-term partner. Create shared roadmaps with the clients. Talk about outcomes, not just features. Build relationships with the C-level and non-technical business stakeholders. Keep in mind, this isn't about working harder, it's about showing up differently. Good enough isn't good enough anymore. If you're ready to stand out, grow your business, and lead with trust, the time to evolve is now. Let's all get to work. So, thank you so much for your time today. And again, I know we're at time, so if you have any questions, come see me at the Cyber Defense Advisors booth, number 434, near the lounge in the hall. Thank you so much.